FBI's mission is to protect the American people and uphold the U.S. Constitution, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we had a couple years ago, it was a hearing, and I actually, looking on all of the concerns that I've seen was really warrantless surveillance and abuses of Section 702 of FISA. I compare your agency to KGB, and spending 2 years in this committee, reading a lot of reports now, doing a lot of hearings, I am really shocked that your agency is involved not just unlawful surveillance of American citizens, intimidation of American citizens, censorship of American citizens, potential cover-ups of convenient political figures, and potential setups of inconvenient political figures. And a lot of my colleagues asked a lot of questions, but I think when we look at that, and unfortunately we haven't been doing our job authorizing spending, which was not authorized by our committee already for over a decade, we're going to have this serious conversation and including reauthorization of Section 702. But I want to talk about, follow up on some other issues that you mentioned about that my colleagues I was talking about, and you mentioned that you focus on malign foreign actors. So in Durham report, which describes 2020, he states, and this is a quote, "Steele subsources could have been compromised by the Russians. FBI never gave appropriate consideration to the possibility that the Steele reports was Russian disinformation. No vetting happened. You have some falsified FISA court application. You have some very shady, confidential human sources that you kept paying for them. Nothing was vetted. Some of your head of counterintelligence division was accused of taking money from Russian oligarchs just recently this year. So you said it all was bad. Now we go to 2022. Your agency is involved with SBU, Security Service of Ukraine, to actually provide information to big tech to censor just views of American people. No vetting seems as happening. This is information, actually a lot of this information was pro-Russian against Ukraine and pro-Putin. Your agents just pass it along. It seems like nothing happened. And it's interesting for me that, when I raised some issue, actually beginning of July, and what's happening in Ukraine, I don't have any confidential human sources, just using common sense and intelligence that something is wrong happening in Ukraine. It seems like there is a lot of infiltration. I was attacked. Oh my gosh, how can you question? Well, strangely enough, after me raising this question in the middle of July, President Zelensky fired his SBU top guy, opens over 600 investigations, is potential, infiltration by Russians, and then fire a lot of other people for corruption, and anti-corruption prosecutor was suddenly installed. But what is really interesting for me, how could you have these processes, and are you doing actually any investigation to look? Because it seems to me, as I understand, you still have our agencies working with SBU, with, coming from KGB time and FSB time has a lot of potential to have this infiltration. Are you doing any investigations on these issues?
Doing investigations on...
Yeah, to look at that, why we're doing unvetted information we're taking from SBU, which actually was infiltrated and given to censor Americans to our big tech companies. Are you looking into that as an agency?
I'm not sure there's an investigation that is directly on point to what you're saying. I mean, certainly the SBU is an agency that we
so we're not doing
worked with for a long time.
So did we change the processes now, since we know your guys work with SBU? SBU was infiltrated by Russian, and, big tech was censoring American citizens with this unvetted information that actually was provided by Russians. Do you change any processes? Or is it still happening? You have still the same processes that happen. Is it still happening now?
Well, the engagement that we had with SBU was during the...
But I'm talking right now.
Yeah.
Because recently, some of your agents had actually a joint meeting, and they were bragging how they're top cooperations with SBU. Did you change processes?
I'm not sure what processes you're talking about.
To vet information.
Yeah.
What's happening?
Again, during the period at the beginning of the invasion...
No, I'm talking right now.
Yeah.
Do you vet information that you get from agencies like SBU? I mean, I don't know if are we being stupid? I understand. Are we being infiltrated by Russians or corrupt? I don't understand why we're not vet information with such a really challenging agency. So are you changing anything of that? I would like to have a briefing or something on this, because if you're not looking at that, I have a huge problem with that.
I'm happy to try to see if we can arrange to get you a better briefing on the subject.
Because this is a serious national security issue. I yield back.